Virginia landlords. Beginning July 1st, 2026, one of the biggest changes to Virginia landlord tenant law is going to impact us small landlords hard. Most people don't fully understand the financial consequences yet. Virginia is extending the mandatory non-payment of rent notice period from 5 days to 14 days before landlords can terminate the lease and begin seeking possession through the court process. And while they may sound like a very small change, the real-world impact is anything but small. So let's talk about what this actually means in practical terms. So here at Freedom, our leases have rent due on the 1st of the month with a 5-day grace period. So if rent isn't paid, it becomes late on the 6th. On the 6th, Freedom, on behalf of our landlord, serves what many people refer to as a 5-day pay or quit notice. Legally, this is the written non-payment notice required under the Virginia Residential Landlord Tenant Act. That notice tells the tenant, pay rent within the required time frame, or landlord is going to terminate your rental agreement and begin eviction proceedings. And under the current law, you can visit the clerk's office to file for that unlawful detainer around the 12th of the month. But beginning July 1st, that required notice period increases to 14 days. So instead of filing around the 12th, you'll now be filing on the 20th or the 21st. So why is this especially dangerous for small landlords? Because most small landlords with 1 to 5 rental properties are heavily dependent on that rental income. They're using it to cover things such as their mortgage, their HOA dues, their insurance, their maintenance, and sometimes even portions of their own personal household expenses. Here in Prince William County, where Freedom Property Management is headquartered, we can currently get an uncontested non-payment eviction through the legal process in about 60 days. So let's walk through what this change means. Currently, rent's due the 1st, tenant doesn't pay. Notice is served on the 6th, file at the courthouse on the 12th, your first return hearing date, 2 to 3 weeks later. Judgment's then granted, you have a 10-day appeal period that happens, and then the writ of possession's available. Sheriff then posts the eviction at the rental unit. So if rent was due on May 1, we're normally at the end of June, typically regaining possession of the property. That means we're changing locks, assessing damages, coordinating contractors, and determining what repairs may be needed. But practically speaking, the security deposit is usually the only immediate source of funds that are available for past due rent, repairs, and turnover. The collections process with the evicted tenant, well, that's a whole other video in itself. So once possession's returned, the clock still doesn't stop. Most eviction-related turnovers in Northern Virginia can take another 3 to 4 weeks just to get the property ready to be marketed again. And then you still have that leasing time. Even during peak rental season, you're still gonna have 3 to 6 weeks until a new tenant is secured and takes possession. So under today's laws, many landlords are already facing 5 to 6 months of disrupted rental income during a non-payment eviction. With the new 14-day notice, when that takes into effect, that timeline may be closer to 7 months. Here at Freedom Property Management, our average rent rate is about $2,900 a month. So you multiply that over 5, 6, 7 months. You're looking at $15,000 to $20,000 just in vacancy exposure alone. Remember, that doesn't include rehab costs. So at this point, a lot of people would ask, why would anyone still want to be a small landlord? And honestly, that's a really fair question. I personally own 3 residential properties right here in Prince William County, 2 rentals and my primary home. So why do I still choose to invest in residential rentals in Virginia? Well, because if you operate your rental property like a business, your risk is drastically reduced. Not eliminated, I can't do that, but drastically reduced. The landlords who struggle the most are usually the ones who don't have reserves, who don't understand timelines, they self-manage without systems, or they don't stay current on changing laws. On the other hand, successful landlords understand that this is a business, and a business requires systems, processes, documentation, financial planning, and professional guidance. So, what's the best way to reduce your risk as a landlord in Virginia? Preparation. My recommendation has always been for landlords to have 3 to 6 months of carrying costs accessible for each rental property. And notice I said accessible, not necessarily sitting in cash or in investments. So it could be a savings investment that could be liquidated quickly, or a line of credit, or a portfolio loan. The key here is being able to access those funds quickly if something major happens. For example, your HVAC system fails during a heat wave in July. You're gonna need to access $7,000 to $12,000 in 2 business days. Not having money is not a reasonable excuse for failing to comply with your part of the lease agreement. Another huge part of risk reduction is preventive maintenance. Deferred maintenance is one of the fastest ways that a small issue can become a 5-figure problem. And honestly, one of the best risk reduction strategies that we have here is a strong tenant screening platform. The cheapest eviction is the one you never have to file. From verifying income, reviewing rental history, checking payment patterns, and properly screening applicants with proven systems matters more now than ever. And finally, Virginia landlord tenant laws are constantly changing. This is just one of many that are going into effect on July 1. So having a professional property manager who stays current on compliance, on notices, timelines, legal requirements is one of the strongest ways to protect yourself as a landlord. The landlords who succeed long-term usually are not the ones that are taking the biggest risks. They're also not the ones running to the properties doing maintenance themselves. They're the ones that are operating with the best systems and working with the best professionals. If you own rental property in Northern Virginia and want help preparing for these upcoming law changes, reach out to our team at Freedom Property Management. And if you found this video helpful, make sure to subscribe because we'll be continuing to break down these new Virginia landlord tenant law changes over the coming weeks.